I am Archangel Michael, and I speak to you now not because you searched for this message, but because something has already shifted while you were unaware. There are movements that do not announce themselves with noise. There are changes that do not knock loudly. They occur quietly, deliberately, beyond what your eyes can detect. And this is one of those moments. What you feel as ordinary time right now is not ordinary at all. Behind the surface of your routine, something has already turned in your favor. You may feel as though nothing has changed. The same responsibilities still wait for you. The same concerns still hover in your thoughts. The same questions about provision, stability, and security may still try to speak loudly in your mind. But hear this clearly. Visible stillness does not mean inactivity. Silence does not mean absence. In the unseen, there has been movement, measured, precise, intentional. A door has shifted on its hinges, not in front of you, but behind the scenes where outcomes are decided long before they are revealed. This opening did not come suddenly. It did not happen impulsively. It was not emotional, and it was not rushed. It was the result of alignment over time, of endurance you did not realize was being counted, of restraint you thought went unnoticed, of moments when you chose to keep going even when it felt pointless. While you focused on surviving one day at a time, arrangements were being made beyond your awareness. While you wondered if your efforts mattered, they were being weighed carefully. Nothing you carried was ignored. You are accustomed to thinking that doors only open when you push them, knock on them, or demand entry. But this door was not opened by force. It was opened by timing. It was opened because conditions were met quietly, without ceremony. There are financial shifts that do not announce themselves immediately, because they must first be secured, protected, and stabilized before they are revealed. What is forming now required discretion before visibility. Do not confuse this moment with false hope or empty reassurance. This is not a promise designed to distract you from reality. This is a declaration of a change that has already begun. You are standing at a point where the outcome is no longer undecided. It is simply unrevealed. The process has moved past debate. What remains is the transition from unseen to seen, from approved to delivered, from arranged to experienced. If you feel a strange calm mixed with uncertainty, that is not coincidence. If you sense that something is different even though you cannot explain what, that is not imagination. Often, the first sign of a shift is not excitement, but quiet stabilization. Your spirit senses movement before your circumstances do. Your awareness is catching up to what has already been set in motion. Do not rush ahead of this moment with fear. Do not look backward with regret. There is nothing you need to fix right now, nothing you need to prove, nothing you need to chase. This opening is not dependent on your striving, it is dependent on timing that is already unfolding. Remain steady, remain observant, remain grounded. The change you have been asking for is not approaching from the direction you expected, but it is approaching nonetheless. What has begun will continue. What has opened will not reverse. This is only the first indication that the season you have been in is concluding. You are not late. You are not overlooked. You are not forgotten. You are standing at the threshold of visibility for something that was prepared quietly, deliberately, and securely, without noise, without haste, and without error. Stay present. Stay attentive. The unfolding has already started. I am Archangel Michael, and I tell you now what was never meant to be overheard. Your name was spoken in a place you have never entered. It was not spoken casually. It was not spoken in doubt. It was spoken with intent, in a setting where outcomes are shaped before they ever reach the surface of your life. You did not announce yourself there. You were not present to defend your worth. Yet your name was called with clarity, as though it belonged there all along. You must understand this. Names are not spoken lightly in rooms of decision. A name carries history, weight, reputation, and trajectory. When your name was mentioned, it carried more than your present circumstances. It carried the record of your persistence, the quiet sacrifices no one applauded, the resilience you were forced to develop when answers did not come quickly. What you see as a series of disconnected struggles was seen there as a pattern of reliability. What you considered invisible endurance was recognized as qualification. This conversation did not begin with opportunity, it began with recognition. Before doors open, attention is given. Before provision is released, assessment takes place. When your name entered that space, it was not questioned whether you were worthy of consideration. The question was how the timing could be aligned without destabilizing what was being prepared for you. The pause you experienced in your own life was not denial, it was calibration. You may have felt forgotten during this period. You may have wondered why others seemed to move ahead while you remained stationary. But hear this clearly. Being discussed in rooms you cannot access often feels like delay on the outside. Silence often accompanies preparation. Just because you were not informed does not mean you were not involved. Decisions are often made long before invitations are sent. What was spoken about you was not exaggerated, nor was it diminished. It was accurate. It reflected who you have become, not merely who you once were. Growth that happens under pressure leaves a signature. Integrity developed in obscurity carries authority. These things were recognized when your name was spoken. You did not have to argue for them. They were evident. Do not imagine a dramatic scene. This was not chaos or urgency. It was calm, deliberate, measured. Your name was not rushed into the conversation. It arrived naturally, as though it belonged in that sequence. That is how alignment reveals itself. When something is meant to move forward, resistance does not shout. It steps aside quietly. You may not receive immediate confirmation that this conversation took place. Often, the first sign is subtle, a shift in tone, an unexpected openness, a delay that suddenly makes sense. Pay attention to small changes. They are not random. They are echoes of decisions already made. I tell you this not to stir impatience, but to stabilize you. When you know your name has already been spoken, you stop begging for recognition. You stop doubting your relevance. You stop forcing doors that were never meant to be pushed. You wait with awareness, not anxiety. Remain steady. What is acknowledged, you will now begin to move toward you. Names spoken in hidden places do not return unanswered. The process has already advanced beyond chance. You are now positioned for what follows, not because you demanded it, but because you were remembered when it mattered most. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak to you now about the door you never knocked on, the one you did not plan for, prepare a speech for, or stand outside waiting to be noticed. This door was not opened by insistence, nor by repeated requests, nor by proving yourself one more time. It opened because there are moments when effort is no longer the deciding factor. There are times when alignment replaces striving and timing overrides noise. You have been trained to believe that nothing moves unless you push it, that access only comes to those who ask loudly enough, explain themselves clearly enough, or persist until resistance gives way. But this opening did not respond to pressure. It responded to positioning. While you were occupied with what you could control, something beyond your reach was being arranged on your behalf. Not everything that benefits you requires your direct involvement. This door opened quietly because it was not meant to draw attention too early. Some opportunities must be shielded from exposure until they are secure. Some financial shifts require protection before visibility. What has opened now was preserved from interference, from misinterpretation, from premature celebration. It was kept out of sight so it could be stabilized without distortion. You may struggle to accept this because it challenges how you understand progress. You may think, if I didn't pursue it, how could it be meant for me? But understand this. What is meant for you does not always arrive through pursuit. Sometimes it arrives through recognition. Sometimes it comes because your endurance outlasted the season of asking. Sometimes it comes because silence revealed more about you than effort ever could. You did not miss this door. You were not late to it. You were not excluded from its opening. It opened behind the scenes because the path to it did not require your presence yet. There are stages you are spared from walking through because others are assigned to prepare the way. That is not weakness. It is favor expressed through order. You have questioned whether your quiet perseverance mattered. You wondered if choosing restraint over reaction, patience over panic, integrity over shortcuts had cost you opportunities. Hear this clearly. Those choices did not close doors, they redirected them. What bypassed you was not lost. It was rerouted. What was delayed was not denied. It was refined. This opening did not come as a reward for perfection. It came as a response to consistency, not the kind that draws attention, but the kind that remains steady when nothing seems to move. That steadiness marked you. It distinguished you when others withdrew. It placed you in consideration without you ever needing to announce yourself. Do not rush now to make sense of every detail. You are not meant to understand the full structure of what has opened yet. Awareness will come in stages. First, there is stabilization. Then there is confirmation. Then there is invitation. If you try to force clarity before its time, you risk misinterpreting the process. Remain calm. The fact that you did not knock does not mean you are unqualified to enter. It means the door recognized you before you recognized it. What opens without your demand often carries less resistance when you finally step through. This is not coincidence. This is not random alignment. This is the result of unseen decisions converging at the right moment. Trust the order. Trust the pacing. What has opened will reveal itself in a way that does not disrupt you, but steadies you. You are not chasing this door. It is positioning itself to meet you. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of what stood against you, and why it no longer has authority to do so. There were forces of resistance you could not see, decisions that leaned away from you before you ever knew they existed, structures that quietly delayed what you were meant to receive. You felt their impact without knowing their source. You experienced the pause, the redirection, the closed responses, but you were never shown the full picture. Now you must understand this clearly. What once resisted you has been overruled. Resistance does not always appear as open rejection. Often, it hides behind silence, bureaucracy, timing that never seems right, or conditions that conveniently fail to align. You may have blamed yourself for these delays. You may have wondered if you lacked something: skill, influence, resources, favor. But the resistance you encountered was not proof of inadequacy. It was a temporary imbalance that has now been corrected. There was a moment when opposing voices carried weight. Opinions were divided. Outcomes were uncertain. Your progress appeared stalled because multiple factors were competing for control. Yet even then, the resistance was not permanent. It was provisional. It existed only until a higher order intervened. Authority does not argue endlessly. When it moves, it resolves. That resolution has taken place. What once slowed movement no longer holds leverage. The objections that mattered most have been addressed. The hesitations that delayed approval have been settled, not through confrontation, but through clarity. When truth becomes undeniable, resistance loses its footing. It does not collapse dramatically. It simply stops being relevant. You may notice this shift not through celebration, but through ease. Conversations that once felt tense will soften. Processes that felt complicated will simplify. Barriers that required explanation will dissolve without discussion. This is how overruling manifests, not with noise, but with flow. Understand this. Resistance was allowed for a time not to defeat you, but to refine the outcome. It filtered what could not sustain the weight of what was coming. It removed fragile structures that would have failed later. What remains now is stable enough to support progress without collapse. Do not revisit old frustrations or replay past obstacles. They no longer have jurisdiction. Their purpose has concluded. To dwell on them now would be to give attention to something that has already lost its authority. You are not stepping into a contested space. You are entering a cleared path. The atmosphere around this opening has shifted from negotiation to execution. What once required approval now requires only implementation. Remain composed. Resistance is loud only while it lasts. Once overruled, it fades quickly, leaving little trace of its former presence. You do not need to defend yourself now. You do not need to justify your position. The decision has already moved beyond debate. What stands before you is not opposition, but alignment. And alignment, once established, moves steadily forward without interruption. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak to you now about the delay you questioned. The one that tested your patience and made you doubt your timing, your decisions, and sometimes even yourself. What you experienced as postponement was not punishment. It was not neglect. It was strategy. There are pauses that feel unnecessary only because their purpose is hidden until the outcome is secure. You saw the delay as time slipping away. You measured it in missed chances, rising pressure, and the uncomfortable feeling of being ready while circumstances lagged behind. But the delay was not idle. It was active. While you waited, conditions were being adjusted to prevent loss, exposure, and premature responsibility. You were not being held back. You were being protected from entering too early. There are financial doors that cannot open the moment desire meets opportunity. Some openings require insulation before access. If they open too soon, they attract strain, conflict, or instability that erodes what they were meant to provide. The delay you endured was not about testing your faith. It was about strengthening the foundation beneath what you would eventually stand on. You were spared from complications you never saw, from obligations that would have drained rather than supported you, from agreements that looked promising but carried hidden weight. Timing intervened on your behalf. What felt like stagnation was actually filtration, removing what could not support longevity. You may recall moments when frustration tempted you to force movement, to accept something less stable simply to escape waiting. It is significant that you did not. Restraint in uncertainty is rare. It demonstrated maturity before visibility. That restraint mattered more than you know. It signaled readiness without desperation, trust without control. Strategic delay also served another purpose. It allowed alignment to occur without pressure. People, resources, and circumstances needed to converge naturally. Forced timing creates fragile outcomes. Proper timing creates sustainable ones. What you receive now is not something you must constantly defend or maintain through effort. It is something designed to hold. Do not regret the time that passed. It was not wasted. It shaped how you will carry what comes next. You are entering this opening with clarity you did not have before, discernment you developed only through waiting, and stability that could not have been rushed. What was delayed has arrived with less risk, fewer complications, and greater support. The pause refined both the opportunity and your capacity to steward it. That is why this transition will feel steadier than you expected. Less dramatic, perhaps, but more secure. Understand this clearly. Strategic delays do not repeat once their purpose is fulfilled. The season of holding has ended. Movement now comes with continuity, not interruption. Release any lingering tension from the waiting. It has served its purpose. The timing that once frustrated you has now positioned you. What opens next does so with intention, protection, and permanence. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the moment you were never notified about. The quiet approval that took place without announcement, without applause, without your presence. There are decisions that change trajectories, which do not come with signatures you can see or conversations you can overhear. They happen privately, deliberately, in settings where outcomes are finalized long before they are revealed. This was one of those moments. While you continued with your days, unaware, a conclusion was reached. Not a discussion, not a possibility, but a decision. It did not require further debate. It did not depend on future performance. It was settled. What had been reviewed was deemed sufficient. What had been questioned was resolved. What had been delayed was authorized to move forward. And you were not called into the room because your presence was not required for validation. This approval did not arrive with urgency. It arrived with certainty. There was no rush because there was no risk. Everything necessary had already been accounted for. The timing, the structure, the safeguards, all were in place. When approvals happen quietly, it is because instability has been removed from the equation. Loud approvals often need reinforcement. Quiet ones do not. You may be accustomed to chasing confirmation, waiting for emails, messages, calls, or signs that something has gone through. But some approvals are internal before they are external. They are finalized before they are visible. The absence of notification does not indicate delay, it indicates discretion. What is protected is not announced prematurely. This approval was not symbolic, it was practical. It set processes in motion that do not require your intervention yet. Steps are being executed without your effort, adjustments made without your explanation, pathways cleared without your defense. That is why you may feel a subtle easing, a reduction of pressure you cannot fully explain. When authorization is granted, resistance loosens its grip even before results appear. Do not mistake silence for uncertainty. Silence now is a sign of completion, not hesitation. The work that required evaluation has already been done. What follows does not need reconsideration. It needs only timing and delivery. You are not expected to act as though nothing has happened, but you are also not required to act as though everything has arrived. This is an in-between moment, a secured outcome waiting for its proper unveiling. Patience here is not passive, it is cooperative. It allows the process to unfold without disruption. Be attentive, but not anxious. Observant, but not reactive. Approvals that occur behind closed doors often surface unexpectedly at moments that seem ordinary until they are not. A conversation shifts, a response changes, an opportunity presents itself without struggle. These are not coincidences. They are the outward signs of what has already been authorized. Trust this, what has been approved will not be withdrawn. Quiet decisions carry weight because they are made without pressure. What has moved forward in silence will arrive with stability. Remain steady. The approval has been given. The next phase will reveal it naturally, without force, without confusion, and without reversal. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the test you did not realize you were taking, the one that quietly separated you from many others long before this moment arrived. You believed you were simply enduring a difficult season. You thought you were waiting without answers, holding on without guarantees. But what you were actually doing was demonstrating patience under pressure, and that patience was being observed. Many reached the same threshold you did. Many stood where you once stood, faced with uncertainty, delay, and unanswered effort. At first, they waited as well. They hoped, they believed. But over time, impatience spoke louder than trust. Frustration eroded consistency. They withdrew, not always dramatically, but subtly. They stopped expecting movement. They settled for less stable paths, simply to regain a sense of control. You did not leave. Even when nothing changed externally, you remained internally steady. You continued forward without visible reward. You resisted the urge to abandon what you sensed was unfinished. That decision, repeated quietly over time, is what set you apart. Not perfection, not strength without weakness, but endurance without spectacle. This test was not about how loudly you believed, but how consistently you remained aligned when belief felt unrewarded. Patience under pressure reveals character more clearly than success ever could. It exposes whether someone is driven by impulse or anchored by trust. That distinction mattered. You may have felt foolish at times for continuing to hope. You may have questioned whether your restraint was costing you momentum. But restraint was precisely what preserved your position. Those who rushed ahead often found themselves carrying outcomes they could not sustain. Those who forced movement inherited instability. You, by waiting, avoided burdens disguised as opportunities. The test of patience is rarely announced. It does not come with clear instructions or a defined end point. It simply unfolds, day by day, until choices accumulate into a pattern. Your pattern spoke clearly. It demonstrated that you could be entrusted with continuity, not just arrival. Do not misunderstand this moment as favoritism. It is alignment responding to consistency. When endurance is required for what lies ahead, those who could not wait were never meant to carry it. What opens now requires steadiness beyond excitement, responsibility beyond relief, wisdom beyond urgency. You are not receiving this because others failed. You are receiving it because you remained. You stayed engaged when disengagement would have been easier. You chose patience when impatience offered faster but weaker alternatives. This is why the transition ahead will not overwhelm you. You have already practiced stability in less favorable conditions. What comes now will feel manageable, not because it is small, but because you have been prepared to hold it without losing balance. The test has concluded. The observation phase has ended. What you demonstrated quietly has positioned you clearly. You were not merely waiting, you were qualifying. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of what will break the silence. the sign that will reach you sooner than you expect, not with spectacle, but with unmistakable clarity. There are confirmations that arrive loudly, and there are confirmations that arrive precisely. This one will be precise. It will meet you in the middle of an ordinary moment and quietly rearrange your understanding of what has been unfolding. You have learned by now not to rely on sudden excitement as proof. What is coming will not overwhelm you emotionally at first. Instead, it will register as recognition, a message, a response, an encounter, or a shift in communication that feels different, not dramatic, but decisive. You will notice the tone before you notice the content. Something will feel settled where it once felt uncertain. Do not look for a grand announcement. Look for alignment. The sign will come in a way that fits naturally into your life without forcing you to explain it to anyone else. That is how you will know it is genuine. What is meant for you does not require performance. It arrives with coherence, not confusion. This confirmation will answer questions you have not spoken out loud. It will connect fragments you assumed were unrelated. What once felt stalled will suddenly show continuity. You may even wonder why it took you so long to see it, but that realization will come with calm, not regret. Timing sharpens awareness. When clarity arrives, it feels inevitable. You are not being asked to chase this sign. You are being asked to notice it. Attentiveness now matters more than action. The shift you have been waiting for will announce itself through access, an openness that did not exist before, a response that arrives without resistance, a door that opens without negotiation. Pay attention to subtlety. The sign may appear as permission where there was once hesitation, as follow-through where there was once delay, as initiative from someone who previously remained distant. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations that what was approved behind the scenes is now moving toward visibility. Do not dismiss small changes. Large outcomes often reveal themselves through modest beginnings. The first indication is rarely the full result. It is the signal that movement has crossed from the unseen into the observable. Once that threshold is crossed, momentum builds naturally. You will not need to question whether this is the sign. Recognition will be immediate, even if understanding follows gradually. It will feel right without needing explanation. That is the hallmark of alignment reaching the surface. Remain steady. Remain present. The silence is about to give way, not to noise, but to confirmation. What has been set in motion is preparing to make itself known. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the moment that almost altered the timing, the subtle resistance that rose not from outside forces, but from within you. This was not opposition meant to destroy what was forming. It was hesitation born from fatigue, doubt shaped by waiting, and caution learned through disappointment. Fear did not arrive loudly. It came quietly, disguised as realism, disguised as self-protection, disguised as wisdom. You questioned whether it was safer to expect less, whether it was wiser to lower anticipation so disappointment would not strike again. You told yourself that being prepared for nothing was better than hoping for something that might not arrive. That instinct was understandable. It was shaped by experience. But understand this clearly. Fear did not cancel what was being arranged. It only threatened to delay your readiness to receive it. Fear has a way of convincing you that restraint means withdrawal, that staying guarded means staying safe. But there is a difference between wisdom and retreat. Wisdom keeps you grounded. Retreat keeps you small. You stood at that intersection more than once. You felt the urge to disengage emotionally, to stop watching for change, to detach from expectation entirely. That was the final tension point. What saved you was not confidence, it was awareness. Even in doubt, something in you remained alert. Even when you tried to convince yourself nothing was coming, you did not fully turn away. That thin line of openness mattered. It kept alignment intact. Fear was present, but it did not gain authority. This is important for you to understand now, because fear often appears just before confirmation. Not because something is wrong, but because your internal landscape must adjust to match what is about to change externally. When a shift approaches, your old expectations are challenged. The mind resists recalibration. Fear is often the sound of transition, not the signal of failure. Do not be ashamed of that moment. It did not disqualify you. It revealed your humanity. What matters is that fear did not become your final decision. You did not let it define your posture. You did not let it rewrite your direction. You continued forward, even if cautiously, even if quietly. This is why the movement that follows will feel steadier than sudden. You are not being thrown into something unfamiliar. You are stepping into something your awareness has already begun to adapt to. Fear tested whether you would close yourself off. You did not, and because you remained open, even slightly, the process continued uninterrupted. Now hear this clearly. Fear no longer has leverage here. Its purpose has been exhausted. It has shown you where healing was needed, where trust had been strained, where expectations required refinement. It cannot slow what is already aligned. You do not need to revisit that hesitation. It does not define this moment. What matters is that you are still here, still aware, still attentive, still positioned. The movement that nearly paused is now advancing with stability. Fear did not stop what was coming. It only revealed how close you were to receiving it. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of a pattern that has followed you longer than you realized. A cycle you adapted to, learned to manage, and almost accepted as permanent. This pattern did not begin with you, yet you carried its weight. It shaped how you planned, how you hoped, how cautiously you trusted momentum. It taught you to expect fluctuation instead of flow, effort instead of ease, recovery instead of accumulation. That pattern has reached its conclusion. Patterns persist not because they are powerful, but because they are familiar. You learned how to survive within limitation. You learned how to adjust expectations to avoid disappointment. You became skilled at navigating uncertainty, even when stability felt distant. What you called realism was often adaptation to repetition. But adaptation is not destiny. A pattern can exist for years and still be temporary. This financial cycle was reinforced through repetition, periods of progress followed by sudden strain, relief followed by depletion, opportunity followed by interruption. Each time you recovered, each time you recalibrated, and each time you wondered why momentum never seemed to sustain itself. The answer was not lack of discipline or effort. It was that the pattern itself was never meant to be permanent. What is breaking now is not a single obstacle. It is the rhythm that kept resetting your progress. This is not about one payment, one approval, one gain. It is about continuity replacing interruption, stability replacing recovery mode, flow replacing correction. Pattern breaking rarely feels dramatic at first. It feels unfamiliar. When repetition ends, the absence of struggle can feel disorienting. You may catch yourself waiting for the setback that used to follow improvement. That expectation is residue, not reality. Do not interpret calm as vulnerability. It is the sign of restructuring taking hold. This shift affects more than finances. It recalibrates how you relate to provision itself. You will notice decisions becoming less reactive. Planning will feel clearer. Pressure will ease in subtle ways before it disappears in visible ones. That is how lasting change establishes itself, from the inside outward. The pattern broke because its purpose expired. It taught you endurance. It trained discernment. It revealed what was unsustainable. Now it has nothing more to produce. Continuing it would no longer serve growth. It would only repeat instruction already learned. You are not entering an untested season. You are entering a stabilized one. The skills you developed under pressure will now support expansion instead of survival. What once drained you will no longer define the pace. Do not rush to name this change prematurely. Let it establish itself. Pattern breaking requires space to solidify. The absence of chaos is not emptiness, it is structure forming quietly. The cycle has ended. What begins now does not require constant correction. It moves forward without pulling you back into repetition. You are stepping out of recovery and into continuity. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now with clarity about what must accompany what is opening, because access without wisdom creates loss. What has begun to move in your direction carries weight, and weight requires steadiness. This is not a warning meant to frighten you. It is guidance meant to preserve what is being entrusted. When increase approaches, the greatest risk is not opposition. It is mismanagement born from urgency. You are entering a phase where discretion matters more than explanation. Silence will protect momentum. Not everyone needs to know what is forming, how it arrived, or what it may become. Visibility too early invites interference, comparison, and pressure that can fracture something still stabilizing. What is secure does not need announcement. What is protected does not need validation. Guard your reactions as carefully as you guard your resources. Excitement is natural, but impulsiveness erodes structure. There is a difference between gratitude and display, between confidence and exposure. Choose gratitude. Choose composure. Let results speak for themselves when the time is right. Be deliberate with commitments. Not every opportunity that appears alongside increase is aligned with it. Expansion attracts requests, expectations, and invitations that can dilute focus. You are not required to say yes to prove momentum is real. You are permitted to pause, to evaluate, to maintain pace rather than accelerate it. Sustainability is the objective now, not speed. Pay attention to how peace functions as a boundary. If a decision disturbs clarity or introduces unnecessary strain, it deserves reconsideration, even if it promises gain. What is meant to last arrives without internal conflict. Pressure is not a sign of importance. Alignment is. Stewardship also means honoring order. Pay attention to sequence. Do not skip steps because impatience whispers that you might miss something. You will not miss what is aligned. Rushing ahead of structure invites instability behind you. Let each phase complete its work before demanding the next. This is not about restriction, it is about longevity. What you are stepping into is designed to support you, not consume you. Wise stewardship ensures that increase strengthens your life instead of complicating it. Simplicity will be your ally. Clarity will be your guide. Remain grounded. Remain attentive. Let humility shape how you carry progress. What is opening will continue to open if it is handled with care. The door does not close because of gratitude or patience. It closes only when urgency replaces wisdom. You have been prepared for this. Now, let wisdom preserve what alignment has initiated. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the direction from which this provision will arrive, because it will not come from where you have been looking. Expectation has trained your attention toward familiar channels, toward paths you have already walked, toward sources you understand and can predict. But what is moving toward you is not emerging from routine. It is approaching from an angle you did not calculate. You assumed that if change came, it would come through effort you initiated, conversations you maintained, or systems you already know. Yet what has been authorized is designed to bypass fatigue, bypass repetition, and bypass the cycle you just exited. That is why it must arrive from an unexpected source. Familiar routes would pull you back into familiar strain. This opening requires a different entry point. Unexpected does not mean chaotic. It does not mean reckless or ungrounded. It means unanticipated by your previous logic. It may arrive through a person you did not consider influential, an opportunity you dismissed as unlikely, a connection you thought was incidental, or a shift in circumstance you did not recognize as significant at first. Do not underestimate subtle entry points. They often carry the greatest momentum. This source will not demand that you convince it of your worth. It will not require excessive explanation or persuasion. Recognition will already be present. You will notice this immediately, not because it feels dramatic, but because it feels cooperative. There will be less resistance than you are used to encountering, less negotiation, less proving. That ease is intentional. Be careful not to reject what does not match your expectations. When something arrives differently than imagined, the instinct is to question its legitimacy. But alignment does not always resemble anticipation. Sometimes it contradicts it. Discernment now is not about familiarity, it is about coherence. Does it fit without force? Does it progress without strain? Does it stabilize rather than agitate? These are your markers. The unexpected source also serves another purpose. It prevents entitlement. When provision arrives from directions you cannot control, gratitude stays intact. Humility remains present. Dependency shifts away from methods and toward awareness. This keeps the pattern from reforming. You are not meant to master the source. You are meant to steward the outcome. You may feel surprised by how naturally this unfolds once it begins. What you thought would require effort may require only response. What you prepared to chase may come to meet you. Do not rush to define it too quickly. Let it reveal itself fully before you label it. Remain open without being scattered, attentive without being suspicious. The unexpected source will make sense in hindsight, even if it feels unconventional at first. When alignment enters from a new direction, it is not to confuse you. It is to free you from repetition. What is arriving knows where to find you. Stay present. Stay receptive. The source may surprise you, but the stability it brings will not. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of what surrounds what is coming. The protection placed not only on the outcome, but on the process itself. Provision without covering invites loss. Increase without boundaries invites erosion. What has been set in motion for you has not been released without safeguarding. It has been encircled with restraint, clarity, and timing so that what arrives is preserved after it appears. Protection does not always look like prevention. Sometimes it looks like limits that frustrate you at first, pauses that slow momentum, or boundaries that restrict access. These are not obstacles. They are guards. They ensure that what reaches you remains intact rather than exposed. You are not being denied speed. You are being granted stability. There will be moments when you are tempted to overextend, to share too much, to commit too quickly, to multiply responsibilities before the foundation has fully settled. This is where protection operates quietly. You may feel hesitation where enthusiasm once rushed forward. That hesitation is not fear. It is restraint working on your behalf. Listen to it. It will keep you from dispersing what is meant to consolidate. You are also being protected from loss through misalignment. Not every hand extended toward you will be meant to partner with what is opening. Not every request will be aligned with continuity. You will notice an increased clarity around what drains versus what sustains. This discernment is part of the covering. It prevents erosion before it can begin. Protection extends to timing as well. You will not be exposed to pressure before you are ready to respond without compromise. You will not be forced into explanations before outcomes can speak for themselves. The unveiling will happen at a pace that preserves integrity. What is meant to last does not arrive under strain. Be mindful that protection sometimes feels like exclusion. Certain opportunities may bypass you. Certain conversations may not invite you in. Do not interpret this as setback. It is insulation. It keeps your focus narrow and your energy concentrated. Expansion comes later. Preservation comes first. What you receive will be guarded not by force, but by order. Systems will align. Processes will simplify. What once required constant vigilance will now require only attention. That is the sign of protection functioning properly, when effort gives way to flow without loss of control. Trust the boundaries that appear. Trust the pacing that feels slower than anticipation. Trust the discernment that sharpens your decisions. These are not limitations placed on you. They are safeguards placed around what you are meant to keep. What arrives under protection remains available long after arrival. What is covered does not slip away. What is guarded does not erode quietly. You are not only being given access, you are being given preservation. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of timing, because what is approaching is closer than your mind has calculated. You have measured movement by past delays, by how long things used to take, by the distance between effort and result you became accustomed to enduring. That measure no longer applies. The pace has changed. What once required endurance now requires readiness. You may still feel as though there is space between where you stand and what has been described. That feeling is not distance, it is transition. Momentum often becomes noticeable only after it has already begun. The moment when something shifts from preparation to execution rarely announces itself. It simply accelerates quietly, and suddenly what felt far becomes immediate. Do not anchor your expectation to specific dates or rigid timelines. What is unfolding is not bound to calendars in the way you expect. It is bound to alignment. Once alignment is complete, movement follows quickly. and alignment has already been established. What remains is the natural progression from approval to manifestation. You will notice time compressing in subtle ways. Conversations that once stretched will resolve faster. Responses that once lagged will arrive without prompting. Processes that once required repeated effort will advance with minimal friction. These are signs that momentum has crossed a threshold. When movement begins to compound, progress feels sudden even though it was prepared over time. Be attentive to readiness rather than waiting for certainty. Certainty often arrives after action, not before it. You are not being rushed, but you are being positioned. The window opening does not require panic, but it does require presence. Distraction now would not stop what is coming, but it could delay your ability to engage with it fully. What approaches will not demand that you reorganize your entire life overnight. It will integrate itself. That is why it may arrive sooner than you expect. You are more prepared than you realize. The readiness you developed quietly is sufficient. You are not behind schedule, you are synchronized. If impatience rises, let it pass. Impatience is often a sign that awareness is catching up to reality. You are sensing proximity, not absence. Trust that feeling without forcing its outcome. Let what is moving complete its approach without interference. The distance is shorter than it appears. The transition is already underway. What was once described as someday has entered the stage of soon, and soon will arrive without announcement. Remain steady. Stay receptive. What is nearing you will not miss its moment, and you will not miss yours. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of what is required from you, not in effort, not in striving, but in posture. There is a role that cannot be fulfilled by anyone else, not because it is difficult, but because it belongs specifically to you. This role is subtle. It does not draw attention, yet it determines how smoothly what has opened integrates into your life. Your task now is not to accelerate events, but to remain aligned with them. Alignment is maintained through restraint as much as through action. You are being asked to stay observant without becoming reactive, engaged without becoming controlling, prepared without becoming tense. This balance matters. It keeps momentum clean. There will be moments when instinct urges you to rush ahead, to secure outcomes before they settle, to explain before clarity is required, to act before direction is complete. Resist that urge. Premature action does not create safety, it fractures timing. You do not need to seize what is already moving toward you. Let it arrive in full form rather than forcing an incomplete version. Your role also involves discretion. Speak selectively. Not everything you sense needs to be shared. Some developments lose strength when exposed too early. Silence now is not secrecy, it is stewardship. It preserves shape while structure is still forming. What is stable can be spoken of later without risk. Remain grounded in your routines. Stability in the ordinary supports expansion in the extraordinary. Do not abandon consistency in anticipation of change. The discipline you practiced during uncertainty is the same discipline that will support continuity now. Carry it forward. Watch your internal dialogue. Replace urgency with attentiveness. Replace anticipation with presence. When the mind races ahead, gently bring it back to what is unfolding now. You are not missing anything by staying centered. You are allowing clarity to meet you where you stand. This phase does not require perfection. It requires steadiness. You are not being evaluated for flawlessness. You are being positioned for sustainability. What opens next is not fragile, it is responsive. Your calm engagement allows it to respond fully. Trust that you will know when to move. Direction will not be vague when action is required. Until then, your role is to remain ready without tension, confident without noise, and open without reaching. This is not passivity, it is precision. And precision now will ensure that what arrives integrates cleanly, without disruption, without loss, and without regret. I am Archangel Michael, and I speak now of the confirmation that will reach you before proof ever does. The quiet assurance that settles within you ahead of visible change. This is not imagination. It is not optimism trying to protect you from disappointment. It is alignment making itself known internally before it appears externally. When outcomes are secured, the first place they register is not in circumstances, but in the spirit. You may notice a shift that feels subtle at first, a calm that interrupts worry mid-thought, a steadiness that replaces the urge to anticipate worst-case outcomes, a sense of grounding where restlessness once lingered. This peace will not come because every question has been answered. It will come because uncertainty has lost its authority. Something within you will recognize that the waiting has changed in nature. This peace will arrive without explanation. You will not reason your way into it. It will simply be present. That is how you will know it is confirmation rather than emotion. Emotions fluctuate. This peace stabilizes. It does not rush you forward or pull you backward. It holds you in place with clarity. Do not dismiss this internal signal because nothing external has changed yet. Internal confirmation always precedes visible manifestation when alignment is real. When peace arrives before proof, it means resistance has ended at the level that matters most. The path ahead has already been cleared of conflict, even if you cannot yet see the outcome. You may find that certain worries no longer hold your attention. Thoughts that once spiraled will stop short. Decisions will feel simpler. Options will narrow naturally. This is not limitation, it is focus. Peace refines attention. It removes noise without effort. This confirmation through peace also protects you from overreaction when movement begins. You will not be pulled into panic or urgency when doors start to open. You will recognize progression without needing to chase it. That steadiness will allow you to respond wisely rather than impulsively. Be attentive to this peace. It is not passive, it is informative. It signals that the unseen work has reached completion. When peace arrives without persuasion, it means alignment is no longer forming, it is established. Do not search for proof to justify the calm. Let the calm stand on its own. Proof will follow in time, but peace is not dependent on it. Peace is the evidence that what has been set in motion is trustworthy. When you feel this settling, allow it to anchor you. Do not analyze it away. Do not second-guess it. Accept it as the confirmation it is. What comes next will unfold from this foundation, not from anxiety or anticipation. This peace is not the end of the process. It is the signal that the process has entered its final stage. What has been arranged is now approaching visibility, and you will meet it not with surprise, but with recognition.